So at the beginning of the introduction to this course, we mentioned that my dad gave me 48 hours to decide whether or not I was going to sign one of two contracts. One was to stay in my family's home, and the other contract was to move out. Now, this portion of the talk is called conflict resolution, but for the purposes of this story, we're going to call it the contract. Now, I'm going to let my dad give his version of this story, and then I'm going to give you my truth.
Okay, so let me give you my version of the story. I think it's good if I give you a little context here. We talked about the losses in our family a little earlier in this video, and during this time in our lives, I was really suffering for the first time in my life with depression. I was suffering from anxiety, I was dealing with insomnia, and our relationship was really at a tough point in our lives. And so when Avery applied to colleges, he applied to several and he got into several of them. But one of the ones that he got into was Sacramento State, which is right here in our city. And so we had a family conversation, and it was determined that his freshman year, he could go to Sacramento State and he could live at home. It was a wonderful way for him to save up his money. He always had jobs, and so he was a hustler. He always was making sure that he put some money under his mattress. But he could stay at home, go to school, and then after his freshman year, he could go anywhere he wanted to if he wanted to transfer. He could go down to the Bay Area, he could go to the East Coast, the Midwest. It didn't matter, but we just decided that staying home the first year was important. And I also forgot to mention that he was 17 years old. And so he wasn't going to be 18 for almost a year after he graduated. And so he started feeling himself a little bit as August approached, and he was staying out longer than the rules in the house that we had. He was not communicating with his mom very much, and I understood. He was stretching his arms. He had just graduated from high school. I was there myself at one point in time. But the house had rules, and so it all culminated in one day where we just had this blow up in the kitchen, and I gave him two options, whether he was going to stay at home or whether he was going to leave. So Avery, I'll let you go ahead and tell the truth, as you say, and then we'll go from there.
So there's a couple of things that I want to address that my dad just mentioned. First and foremost, he said we had a family conversation about where I would be going to college. And in reality, that was more of a one-sided monologue from my parents to me, letting me know where I was going to be going to college. And this hurt for a couple of reasons. First, I was watching a lot of my friends from high school getting ready to move away to college. And not only was I staying at the local college, but I was remaining at home. I was still living with my parents. And so it just didn't feel like I was progressing at the same rate. And now the other reason this hurt is I got into another school a couple hours away, and my cousin got into that same school. So when we both found out and we received that acceptance letter, we thought, oh, this is gonna be great. We're gonna go to school together, we're gonna live together, it's gonna be amazing. And it didn't turn out that way. It felt like I wasn't holding up my end of the bargain. And so, admittedly, I became a little bit resentful, and I started to push boundaries a little bit. I started to break some of the rules, and then things culminated to that infamous August day where the weather wasn't the only thing that was heated. So we're gonna go to the only other person that was present for this blow up, and then we'll come back and I'll let you know what I decided.
Okay, so yeah, the contracts. That was definitely a transitional period between the two of them, to say the least. Avery was, feeling himself, acting a little bold, as most 17-year-olds tend to do. And Pops, well, I don't know, maybe he was listening to Drake or something, because he went 0 to 100 real quick on Avery. We kind of walked in and there were, boom, contracts on the table. And so this is the first time that I'm getting to see these in like 6 or so years. So this should be fun as I get to tell y'all the main guidelines if Avery were to stay at home or if he were to leave. And so the guidelines for staying at home, and yep, these are guidelines for sure. It states you will maintain a 3.5 GPA the first semester of school If this is not maintained, you will need to receive scholarships and/or loans to attend the second semester. This requirement will remain in place as long as I financially assist you during your college education. All right, the next one, this cuts deep for millennials. It states, the data plan will be changed on your phone to limit texting and internet access. That's our bread and butter right there. And then it also states, you can continue to have usage of the cars. However, you will pay $100 quarterly for insurance. So Avery was coming out of pocket for those wheels. And it states if he were to leave, the GPA will remain the same. Paying for the phone will still be the same. However, Avery was not paying for car insurance, and so I think I'm going to let him explain the reasoning behind that. I know I was wondering when I was 15. I'm sure y'all are wondering in the crowd. What did Avery do? Did he stay at home? Did he leave? I'm going to kick it back over to them to tell you how this played out. Fellas, thanks for making me laugh a little bit. Back to y'all. Peace.
All right. So I want to address a few things. First being, my brother said that I'd have to pay the phone bill. Now understand, this was before a time where unlimited data was an option. So that was going to be a real issue. Now he also said that if I signed the contract to leave the house, I wasn't going to have to pay for car insurance. Well, here's the reason why. Now, from my previous understanding, if you receive a gift, especially a birthday gift, that gift is yours to decide what to do with it. That was not the case with the car. The car was going to be taken away, regardless of who it was gifted to. So my dad mentioned that I had 48 hours. Best believe I took 47 hours and 55 minutes to make my decision. I mean, I was on the phone with my grandmother, like, Nana, I might need to move in. And of course, after asking why, she was like, well, okay, baby, you know, if that's what you need to do, then I'm here for you. So I bet you're wondering what I decided to do. Well, I don't know if you've been to Sacramento, but it's very difficult to get around without a car. So I felt like I was a little handcuffed. Now I eventually signed the contract to stay in my family's home. I shouldn't even say this and next to him, but it ended up being one of the best decisions I ever made in my life.
Does that hurt?
It hurts so much to say. But hear me out. I ended up moving out almost a year to the date of when I signed the contract. And the amount of growth that I experienced in just that 1 year was tremendous. And best believe when I finally got on my own and I started to realize how much things like toilet paper, paper towels, toothpaste, all of these things, essentials that I just took for granted, man, did I have a different perspective on life at that point.
Well, I think you made the best decision for you at that point in time.
I'm sure you did. I'm sure you did.
At the time, at least. Listen, when Avery signed the contract that day, I asked him to go out to dinner with me the following night. I knew as the more mature one in the relationship that even though we had resolved the conflict, that we now needed to manage the conflict. I knew as a 17-year-old he was going to be a little bit resentful and disappointed that things turned out the way that they did. So we went to dinner, we had a wonderful evening together, and that night I wrote him a letter and I left it on his dresser for him to read it in the morning. And the letter essentially was a love letter from a father to his son. I explained to him that I knew he was disappointed with what had transpired, but this was just a moment in time and this too shall pass. I let him know how much I appreciated him and his mother and his brother for supporting me as I was going through these difficult, dark moments in my life. And I just wanted him to know how much I loved him and how much I appreciated him. And it ended up being one of the best decisions that we both made, because at a moment where our relationship was at its low point, that ended up being the turning point. And that's how we've gotten in front of you today.
Hey everybody, it's Pops. If you want all the latest content that we drop, be sure to subscribe. Be sure to subscribe. Be sure to subscribe. And follow us on LinkedIn at Avery and Brian Baker.